Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Monday, March 15th, 2021 to order. On our first item on our agenda this evening, as is usual about this time of year, is to receive our audit report for fiscal year 2019-2020 prepared by Bloom Shapiro. Tonight we have Santo Carta and Vanessa Rosito, who will provide a presentation to us regarding the audit and the documents that we find on our board pack. So I guess with that, I'll just hand the floor right over to Vanessa and Santo. And Vanessa, I think you have control of the screen.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Let me see if this will work. Please let me know if you can see it. Yes, okay, great. So thank you everyone for having us tonight. I have with me tonight Santo Carta. He is on the phone. So I will be doing the presentation tonight, but Santo can help answer any questions if I need his assistance. So nice seeing everybody tonight. This is the first year I think that we switched partners. So I see some familiar faces. And what we're going to do tonight is just go through this presentation. I think you're used to doing a PowerPoint presentation rather than flipping through the comprehensive annual financial report and all the other reports. Certainly, if you do have questions on specific pages, I can entertain those too. So. Okay, so as far as the agenda tonight, I'm going to talk about the terms of the engagement, what Bloom Shapiro, now CLA, was hired to perform. I'm going to go over an executive summary of the audit, go over some very high-level financial highlights, talk about the results of the federal and state single audit and the management letter. Again, summarize the required auditor's communication to those charged with governance, go over the long, unfortunate list of upcoming GASB pronouncements and those that will affect the town of Guilford. And then lastly, just talk about the merger with CLA and answer any questions should you have them. So as far as the terms of the engagement, we were engaged to express opinions on whether the basic financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also to express an in relation to opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and schedule of expenditures of state financial assistance, otherwise known as the federal and state single audit. Also express an opinion on the compliance related to the programs that we test with the federal and state single audit. Also to provide a report on internal control over financial reporting and the town's compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants, and then internal control over the compliance related to those major programs that we tested. So as far as the results of what we were engaged to do, we have issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. This is the highest form of opinion you can receive. It basically means that everything is stated correctly in accordance with accounting standards. And we did not have any findings in internal control over compliance. Also good results on federal single audit, clean opinion on the major federal programs that were tested and no compliance findings or significant deficiencies in internal control. And the same exact thing on the state single audit, clean opinion on the major state programs that we tested and no compliance findings or significant deficiencies. So all good reports on all of the deliverables. As far as the kind of treetop level look at your financial statements, this first slide shows the government-wide activities. So these are all of the funds of the town aggregated together into the governmental activities column. And then in your business type activities column, that's your waste transfer fund and your marina fund. So just comparing 2019 to 2020 for the governmental activities, looking at revenues increased from last year to this year. Again, remember, these are all the funds of the town, and it's also brought on a full accrual basis of accounting. So revenues went from 110 million to 121 million. Really, the major reason for that was an increase in your operating grants and contributions. And then similarly, in the expense side, expenses went from 106 million to 116 million from last year to this year. So last year, your net position increased about $3.9 million, and this year your net position increased about $4.8 million. Business type activities, again, comparing last year to this year, really nothing to note. Perhaps some better results in both the waste transfer station and the marina fund. So the change in net position last year was an increase of about $13,500, and this year the increase was about $219,000. As far as the governmental funds of the town, on this slide, you'll see presented the major funds of the town. So these are the larger funds of the town: the general fund, bonded projects fund, high school construction, and then community activities. The smaller funds of the town are aggregated together into this fifth column titled non-major governmental funds. So just kind of focusing on the last third of the page, if you will. I'll start with the general fund. Fund balance increased about $2.9 million from last year. You did have some activity in there that doesn't perhaps occur every year. So you did refund some debt, and along with that refunding, you had a pretty nice premium of about $4.9 million. So that added to the increase in the fund balance in the general fund. You also had another bond issuance in the bonded projects fund of about $4 million, and the premium on that fund was recorded in the general fund. So the bonded projects fund fund balance decreased from last year to this year from a negative about $600,000 to negative $1.1 million. And the reason for that negative fund balance, I would say, is just timing. Typically in a capital projects fund, it's just the timing of when the capital expenditures take place and the financing. So I would say there's still some financing that has to take place in that fund. High school construction fund balance really didn't change that much from last year to this year, just a small decrease of about $78,000. Community activities fund balance decreased $3 million from about a positive $494,000 to a negative $2.6 million. And then the non-major governmental funds fund balance decreased slightly, about $250,000 from last year to this year. So overall, all of the governmental funds fund balance decreased slightly, about $1.1 million. Just to talk about the fund balance in the general fund, that was about $18.7 million. That's in a couple of different buckets. So of that amount, 15,000 is non-spendable, which basically means that that is an amount that is prepaid expenditure. $5.2 million is committed for various reasons, from revaluation to sick leave. If you're interested, I can go over the different reasons, but they're on page 44 of the comprehensive annual financial report. And then $2.2 million is assigned 1.7 is assigned for encumbrances, 198,000 is assigned for reserve for personnel, and then 149,000 is assigned for expenditures continuing force. And the remainder is your unassigned fund balance, which is $11.4 million. And then on to the budget presentation for the general fund. This slide presents the revenue side of the general fund. So this presentation shows the original legally adopted budget revenues of $100.6 million. The final budget after any transfers or additional appropriations. So the budget did increase to $101.012 million. And then that final budget column is compared to the actual results of $101.745 million. So you'll see that Guilford ended the year with a positive variance, if you will, in revenues of about $733,000. And then on the expenditure side of things for the general fund, same presentation, original budget and the final budget. So expenditures ended the year 1.25 million less than budget. I would say there's a couple of general government was about 268,000 less than budget. Public Works was 342,000 less than budget. And Board of Education was 254 less than budget. Also, pension and other employee benefits was also under budget significantly, 213,000. And then your fiduciary fund, the pension trust fund, this is the fund where you set aside monies to fund your pension liability. So during the year, you had contributions from the town and from plan members of $3.1 million. You actually had positive investment earnings, so the market came back after the big issue in March. So that's great. You had investment earnings of $3.5 million. And then deductions of benefits and administrative expenses of about $3.6 million. So the pension fund had a nice return to their net position of $2.93 million from last year to this year. And then just some other highlights I thought you might be interested in. Property tax collections were 99.4% this year compared to 99.6%. So pretty respectable considering the year that we went through. And then your various pension plans, the total liability is 21.3 million, and you could see how it's bifurcated by each plan. So employees plan is $6.8 million. Police is 6.4, public school is 4.9, and you'll see the various funding percentages next to those. Volunteer fire department does not have a trust, and that liability is $3.2 million. And then your total OPEB liability, there is no trust for your OPEB plan yet, I believe. So that total liability is $36 million. Any questions on any of the financial numbers before I go into the single audits? So as far as the federal single audit, the town spent $2.4 million of federal awards. We selected the special education IDEA program to test. I mentioned before we issued a clean opinion on that program and did not have any compliance or internal control findings. The state single audit, the town spent $7.2 million of state awards. We tested 2 programs for the state, the drinking water program, and well, actually it's 1 program, but one was part bond and one was the grant. And again, issued a clean opinion on that program and no compliance or internal control findings on that. And then we did issue a management letter, which we, actually try to do every year. We try to, help our clients make their internal controls better. So we had a couple comments, very minor this year. The first comment was about grant revenues. During the audit, we noted that some revenues were credited to expenditures in the budget. So it was hard for us to identify that when we did the budget to GAAP conversion. So we're just recommending that everything be reported gross, or that there's a list of items that are being reported in that, so we can identify them when we go to do the GAAP basis statements. And then the next comment is just a comment that is a best practice. All we hear about are these cyber attacks. Things are changing. The cyber criminals are thinking of new ways to do this all the time. So we just want everybody's awareness to be at the top, just to make sure that there are no issues. Any comments on either of those before I go on to the required auditors communication? No. Okay, so this is a required communication from the audit firm to those charged with governance, which is the Board of Finance. There was a letter that went out. I'm not going to read the letter. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the important things in this letter. So the town did not adopt any new standards this year. As a matter of fact, the GASB had mercy on us and did issue GASB 95, which delayed implementation of all of the standards because of COVID. So that was appreciated. As far as significant estimates, every financial statement has an estimate. So we are required to make sure that when management estimates these amounts, there's no bias in the estimate, whether management is trying to overinflate the estimate or underinflate the estimate to kind of manage the results of the year. So some of those estimates are listed here. The useful lives of capital assets, which is used to calculate depreciation, the allowance for uncollectible receivables, the actuary calculates the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability based upon management's assumptions, and then also the claims incurred but not reported. So we look at all these estimates and make sure that they're reasonable, and we did do that. We did not have any disagreements with management this year. We did not encounter any difficulties. Management did not consult with another accounting firm for opinion shopping, a second opinion on an accounting treatment, and we are independent of the town. And there's 3 slides on the new GASB standards, 1 for each year. So I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm just going to talk about those that I think are going to affect the town. So the next fiscal year, June 30th, 2021, Statement 84, which has to do with fiduciary activities. This is a new definition of what a fiduciary activity is. So management, together with the audit firm, will look at the current fiduciary activities to make sure they still meet the definition, and also make sure there aren't any other activities that the town is involved in that need to be brought into the financial reporting model. Next year, there's a pretty significant standard if the town has significant operating leases. I think a lot of the municipalities are not going to be affected by this, but this is, if anybody follows the FASB, this is very similar to their standard, whereby all of the operating leases are going to have to be capitalized and brought onto the balance sheet as a right to use asset and a liability. So we will talk to both the Board of Education and the town to make sure that they're going to take an inventory of their operating leases to see what kind of impact this is going to have on their financial statements. Similarly, in 2023, Statement 96, which is subscription-based IT arrangements. So these are software agreements. This is this very similar treatment to the lease standard, where you're paying an amount monthly or quarterly for these subscriptions to your technology. Again, this is going to have to be brought onto the balance sheet as an asset and a liability. So the best thing to do is when everyone is inventorying their leases, they should be also inventorying these software arrangements. And then lastly, just a few thoughts about the merger between Bloom Shapiro and CLA. So this was effective January 1st, 2021. CLA is a great firm. They really share the same values and culture that Bloom Shapiro shared, which is why we were, thought this was a very good idea. CLA was really not in New England. So in that respect too, it was a great fit because they're really looking for legacy Bloom Shapiro folks to continue to do what we were doing in New England. It's really not going to have any impact on our clients. They're still going to see the same faces. There's not going to be a new team coming in. It's just going to be a positive impact on both of our employees and our clients. More resources. CLA is actually the largest auditor of states in the United States, and they have over, I think this number is actually understated. I feel like they have about 4,000 government clients. They say we've been drinking from a fire hose for the past couple of months, but I think it's been a great experience and everybody's very helpful and collaborative. And here's our contact information, both myself and Santos. So should you all have questions after the presentation, when you're looking through the reports, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll entertain any questions that anyone has at this point.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah, I could throw a question out there, Mike, if you can entertain me.
Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
Miss, I was just a little bit curious about cyber attack. I think we've got to consider getting insurance for cyber attacks as well. And curious if you've run into it in your firm where some municipalities have actually been.
Jonathan, do you have two devices there?
No.
Now let me
Getting some echo and feedback.
hold on. Let me try. Vanessa, it might be on your end. There we go. Jonathan, try it again, and then Vanessa, come off mute when.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead. It was just
Okay. We probably had something
feedback
going,
on
like
Vanessa's
running
side.
through another speaker, right?
Yeah,
Do
go
you
ahead.
need me to start from the beginning?
Yeah, could you?
That was a little
Please.
garbled, huh?
Yeah.
So
you're
we're
good now.
we're looking at some insurance for cyber attacks, and I'm wondering if your firm has actually run into some municipalities that were attacked and then were able to collect.
I don't know the specifics of that. I know, absolutely you should look into cyber insurance. I can talk to my partner, Jeff Ziplo, who I think some of you know, but he has been involved in a lot of those instances where towns were hacked, and I'm not sure whether or not they had insurance, so I could get back to you on that. I'll check with him.
Okay, I mean, it was just kind of an open question. Didn't require an answer. Just curious if some municipalities already faced the problem.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd indulge me, Jonathan, thank you for that lead-in question. The budget that you just approved does in fact include cybersecurity insurance. And secondly, one of the other recommendations is that we do annual penetration testing. Through the Council of Governments, the region will have access to some testing as part of our dues structure. So we will have the ability to exercise a a threat analysis or penetration test is what they actually call it. So we have some progress there and included some funds in the upcoming budget for that.
Great.
I've got one more, and it's probably just such a basic question because I just really wasn't sure about maybe these new requirements for leases. But would that require kind of a special section and to separate them all and aggregate them? Your operating.
So not really a special section, but it's just the way that, and really nothing would change in the way the town is accounting for it. It would still be a rent expense every month or quarter. It's just basically a financial reporting exercise where you have to take the amounts out of expense and capitalize them and put them in a liability.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Vanessa or Santa?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I just want to also on the manager's letter on the recommendation about the town limiting the process that credits expenditures for revenues received. That is one of Mary Jane's pet peeves. She's been railing against that since she got here. She thought she was going to have a way to get out from under when the SAFER grant expired. However, she was just when she thought she was done, they dragged her back in. So that will, unfortunately, that will appear in next year's audit. I have no doubt. But she also dissuaded the Board of Selectmen from doing something similar to that and counting on American Rescue Plan funding to cover some of the salary expenses for the additional personnel that we're bringing on as a result of the COVID impact. So she was successful in getting more put in, but she was not completely successful in getting the existing ones taken out.
Thank you for that heads up. Bob, I see your hand. Go ahead.
It's not so much a question, just to put a pin in something we might want to look at later. I was interested to see the balances, the funding balances in the pensions, 81, 79, and 74, which despite good financial management and good results in our investments are significantly down from not terribly long ago. So it just brings up the actuarial value of these portfolios. We don't have to address it now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, goes without saying, Mary Jane and Trace, sorry, Linda, to both you and your departments, job well done as usual. Thank you for all your hard work so that we have a very easy audit presentation and very little, if any, comments. So job well done. Anything
Hear,
else
hear.
for CLR? Oh, Veronica, go ahead.
I was clapping. That was like me trying to clap.
That's that. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Veronica.
All right. So there's no action. We just have the presentation. So thank you, Vanessa, for taking the time out. Santo, good to see you very briefly before the meeting started. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will move on. Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Item number 2, public forum. Anybody on our inner meeting wishing to address the board in public forum? Seeing none, we will move to item 3, approved minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. We'll do them obviously in order, one at a time. February 18th, 2021, our regular meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a
Second.
second? Okay. Any discussion, corrections, edits, revisions?
I had one minor one on
Go ahead,
page
Jeff.
page 5 under medical. The middle of the paragraph where it says the sentence that begins claims may not be as low as they have been. I think the intent of that statement was that claims may not be as low as they appear on that statement, because there was an issue with regard to the Anthem migrating to a new computer system. So the actual figures that month may not be what were appearing on that report, and we're hopefully going to be corrected the following month. So that's my recollection anyhow.
Yeah, good pickup. Actually, not too minor. That's a good one. Anything else?
Just I guess maybe a typo on page 5. I'm not sure what the sentence is really supposed to read, but I think it's supposed to read, Mr. Trotta said they are not able to get the interest we're getting on. I think that's supposed to be, we are getting on.
I think it may be we were getting, it's a reflection that they weren't, the interest rates were lower this year than they had been in years past. So it was to reflect that the interest we're accruing this year is less than what it had been in years past.
Thank you.
Thanks for finding that one, Veronica.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor. March 2nd, 2021. This is our budget public hearing with presentations were made. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Tracy, you could figure out which order you want to put that in. Any comments, revisions on those?
I have a general question since we've moved to these Zoom meetings. I haven't even checked. You can go back and look at a historical Zoom meeting on the town website. Okay. Yeah, I have a kind of a general comment about some of these lengthy meetings where we tend to talk, and I know I got to be a little long-winded and said a few things, and I'll go as far in our superintendent's absence as to say he often articulates things very well, but sometimes it takes some time. And I'm wondering if we should point out in the minutes that they are paraphrased and give the public a reference back to the actual Zoom meeting. I noticed that my comments are summarized fairly well. Tracy does an excellent job trying to capture the essence of the discussion, but definitely heavily paraphrased.
Yeah, a lot of times it's the balance of some of our meetings hard to capture, especially the last one, 4 hours worth. Is there something in the meeting minutes we could put like a line saying the video of for these particular minutes can be found on or refer to it? Is that something we could do? I don't know if there's any. I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
It's kind of a new thing, no? About a year now.
I guess we would put it either at the end or we could put it at the beginning. I have no problem with it. I would hope that people would know that it's on there, but we don't know for sure. So
Well, that's the point of recording the meeting.
Yeah.
I
So-
did talk with a couple of neighbors and I said, don't you often in your spare time go back and look at the historical finance, Board of Finance meetings? And most of them just laughed at me. But at least let them know it's available.
I think we could do that.
Jonathan, the legislature is taking up some, considering some legislation, and there's a public hearing on Wednesday around what happens after the governor's executive orders expire and meetings, town meetings, with respect to FOI and what the requirements on municipalities will be relative to providing going forward in hybrid or Zoom meetings, what they're going to be required to provide relative to FOI. So that is an emerging consideration and issue that the legislature is dealing with. So it may well change, but I agree. Certainly letting the folks know that these things are available on our town website couldn't hurt.
And I don't know if this is the time, but, and I really don't know where the executive orders are at, but at some point we'll return to in-person meetings.
Yeah, that's something that I've brought up actually a couple of our meetings. We've been kind of taking the lead, I think, a bit from the Board of Selectmen. I think, I've had and I'll be honest, in the last week, and we're kind of veering off a little bit, but in the last week, a lot of these virtual meetings we've been talking about, when are we thinking about getting back in person? And the month that typically is coming up right now is June. That is I'm not saying that's what we do on this board. We can continue to meet, but that's when I think, if it's, in my opinion, that we all should be, at least the 7 members of the Board of Finance should be vaccinated or have the opportunity to be vaccinated. And as we know, those dates have been moved up for a couple of the age groups. In fact, really, it's been moved up for everybody. So it may be quicker, but I think that maybe June is a good target to go back to in-person meetings, but I would never do that or suggest that if not all of us unanimously were in favor of doing that.
I wonder if a hybrid model might be appropriate too, where, if you're not ready to do in-person meetings, you're a little worried, you could still attend with Zoom or some other option.
I think that's our ultimate goal, but I believe that that's something our first selectman, I know you mentioned it actually, it was our last meeting. I think it was a question that Ms. Wallace asked about budget. Was there anything for technology in the budget to do hybrid? And that is being looked into. So I don't know when we'll get an answer on that, or even when we'll get the equipment to do that, because it takes obviously some time to put everything in place and implement it. But
Okay.
Katie, go ahead. You want to say something?
The only thing I wanted to add, and perhaps Mr. Hoey can speak to this too, I think there's a question, certainly before all this, board members could not vote if they were not in person. So that is going to have to be addressed post this period, whether there will be an allowance given our experience over the last year, or whether that will remain a requirement for board members of any of these boards.
Thank you, Katie, for that. That is exactly what is contemplated in the hearing on Wednesday up at the legislature, because it is currently not authorized by state statute for any of us to do vote by teleconference or by Zoom conference, whatever. So that is part and parcel of the legislation that is being considered. My understanding is that legislation is to be fast-tracked because there is an expiration to the governor's executive powers, and he has clearly indicated he is not interested in extending them beyond that. So post April 19th, there's a new world, and we are not allowed to conduct meetings via Zoom, or we are allowed to conduct them in a hybrid model, but every member who wishes to vote needs to be present.
That's a very good point. So for our purposes, I'm talking about nonprofit organizations. This is governmental. So you're saying that our last meeting though is on April 19th, I believe.
It's a Monday,
So, yeah, it's a Monday. So we would be it would be the last day of the executive orders. It expires the 20th, I thought, but it's through the 19th.
It expires at midnight on the 19th or midnight on the 20th, however you call midnight.
Well, that's very important for us alone. I mean, so it's a very good. Katie, thanks for bringing that up. And listen, if they expire and we have to be in person, then I guess that's something we'll have to address and we'll have to navigate. But in the meantime, we know the governor is looking at it and there's an expiration, and hopefully there'll be something that will allow for hybrid or some other method.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, I'll reiterate the currently scheduled annual town budget meeting on the 6th of April is scheduled to be via Zoom.
Thank you. Just covered my new business.
Yeah, sorry.
Actually, no, maybe that was my old business. I don't know. One of them. So, all right. Thank you. All right. Well, we're still on the March 2nd minutes. We kind of went off on a tangent. We got the motion seconded. So, all in favor of March 2nd?
I just one revision, if we could.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
On page 3, under the family equity liaison paragraph, the second sentence, the one that starts, the individual will be available to students or families who feel their needs are not being met because they are part of a marginalized group instead of whose. So minor change, but.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that, Jeff. Anything else? All right. Now I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. March 4th, budget workshop meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So
So
moved.
Veronica, you can second, or I'll second.
Well, hurry up before I do.
I know I had a couple on this one. I just have to scroll through the first few pages to find them.
I have one. You're looking.
Yeah, Ken, why don't you go ahead first?
Okay, on the proposal that I made on page 8 of those minutes, like an amendment to be in there. When on my third sentence, he suggested a cut of $50,000 on the town and board, as well as respecting the special hardships that our taxpayers have experienced, providing the additional $50,000, estimated $50,000 from the undesignated fund balance to bring the budget under 1%. I just wanted that comment to be in the minutes because it did express the concern for the taxpayers beyond the concerns that were suffered or experienced by the two boards.
Tracy, are you okay with that? You got that? Okay, thank you. Want to make sure you got the word. Okay. On the same page, third paragraph from the bottom, in the second sentence, we'll just start there. It says, he agreed with Mr. Hartman with a 60-40 split, which seems more representative of the funds raised from taxpayers. It's not funds, I know that. I'm trying to figure out whether it was a misspelling or, and it wasn't fear, so I'm thinking the comments, maybe comments raised by the taxpayers, because it's not funds. I know that. Page 9 in the motion, it's the first motion. There is the town budget number of 32 million, and then it says plus debt service of, that should be 10,420,988. And I had one more, and that's at the very end of the minutes on page 12. The paragraph that starts, Ms. Wallace noted the Guilford Courier article made an incorrect mention of the Board of Finance public hearing is March 7th. It was held on March 2nd. I believe, Veronica, you were referring to the Monday meeting, that if there was a second meeting, what day it would be held on. It wouldn't be March 7th, it would be March 8th.
No, actually, what I was trying to point out was that the Courier was implying that there was a public hearing to be held on Saturday. And I just wanted to put it out there that there was not going to be one on Saturday.
So okay, so you're referring to, okay, I got it. So the public hearing is March 7th, it was held. So ultimately then that statement is correct. I know there was also there was something was mentioned about the second workshop if we needed it, but based on that, Veronica, then I have no change on that. That stays as is. That's reflected correctly. Any other, excuse me, any other comments on our corrections, edits, vision, March 4th?
On page 4, middle of the page, just Mr. Trotta's name is misspelled. They just need to throw an A at the end of it.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. If that is all, then I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on. Item number 4, correspondence. Standing Building Committee minutes. You've all received those. Chairman DeMayo is on. Thank you for waiting a little while to join us. It is kind of clear that we have a lot going on prior to getting to the correspondence, the last couple meetings, but it'll go a little bit quicker from this point forward, I'm sure. So anything for Standing Building Committee from their March 2nd meeting minutes?
I have a question.
Mr. Gammerman.
On items 5 and 6, on the HVAC for the Cox and Guilford Lakes, there's some question as to whether both projects will be completed by the summer, or whether half of them would be completed in 1 year and half in the second year. I wondered whether there'd be any savings to the town in stretching that over 2 years, or combining them in the 1 year, or is it just left up to the vendors to process this?
So the concern of the Standing Building Committee is that, and it's not a manpower issue, it's just logistics in trying to get shutting down the HVAC systems in their entirety and getting them back up and running for the start of school. And the systems or the projects are easily broken into an air side and wet side, because there's a boiler involved in each one, and they can be easily separated, and assurance of completion of at least one phase of that prior to the start of school. We would want the vendors to hold their number. We would run the risk otherwise of actually the prices going up if we.
Right.
So within that, when this project does finally go out to bid, and we haven't reviewed the drawings yet, so we still have some more discussion to have on this. If we think it's for the best interest of the town, and we'll get input from the design engineers as well on timing and schedule, we would want the vendors to probably pre-purchase equipment to avoid any type of increase. But as far as combining them to save money, I don't think there'll be enough time to complete the projects in their entirety over the summer. So hopefully that answered your question. We have more discussion on that, because the final drawings haven't been brought to the committee yet for review.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
It was, I think, on the following page, on item 10. I noticed that there was one vendor that was that you're recommending to handle the door and window project at Jones at about $645,000. And you say that was the lowest bid. We seem to be making the decision on that one based on Silver Petrelli's recommendation. Was there any additional consideration given to the other bidders? I mean, that's an appreciable amount of money.
I don't think I understand your question. We did select the low bidder.
The low bidder. Was there any other considerations in looking at the other bidders?
Well, Silver Petroselli has a track record with this vendor. They've done several school projects with them and have performed those projects successfully. So they didn't have any questions or clarifications on the bid as submitted. So we feel that we've made the best decision for the town of Guilford, knowing that this firm has a track record of municipal schools and window projects.
Right. Was an appreciably higher bid than the competitors?
No, this was actually the low bid.
I mean, was it appreciably lower than?
No, I don't have that. You know, I failed to bring my meeting minutes home with me. I don't think there was more than a $20,000 spread between the low bid and the second bid. I think overall we received 5 bids, and the spread was about 100,000 total. So they were grouped up pretty tight.
Okay, good decision.
Yeah, that was, David, you answered what I was going to ask, just how many bids and how close were they? You just answered it, so thank you. That's good.
I got one, if it's okay.
Jonathan, go ahead, John.
Yeah, David, I was curious about the performance contracting the solar panels at Melissa Jones. I see that they're waiting to get started till we have better weather. Do we know approximately the timeline, how long it'll take to put on the panels?
Jonathan, let me get back to you. I don't remember the schedule, but I'll be able to email Mike tomorrow. I'll reach out to Cliff and get that information. I don't have that with me.
You know, I was actually a little more curious about a question, I guess, for Matt again. And I'm sorry, Matt, I may have asked you this one before, but we are waiting for the Melissa Jones project to be completed until we can start getting the calculations, right? For the
Absolutely, Jonathan. That is
okay. I wasn't sure
answer.
if I remembered. So I was curious if we got a few more months, or maybe this is going to get done in the summer.
This is tied to a roof project too, roof replacement project. That's why it made sense to go with Melissa Jones. So it's not just installing the solar panels. The roof has to be stripped and redone. So I think they may have even mobilized up there this week, because we're pretty much out of the woods from a weather perspective.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave.
But I'll get the schedule for you.
Maybe next meeting. No rush. Just kind of curious to the tie-in for getting these calculations.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I want to compliment Mr. DeMayo on his recollection. There were 6 bidders on that job, that Melissa Jones window and door replacement. And the difference between the accurate door and window and the next lowest bidder was about $22,000. Good recollection, Dave.
Thank you.
You don't need your notes after all.
I actually printed the notes and left them on the copy machine at the office.
All right, anything else for David?
Just to thank you for being at all these meetings. It's wonderful.
My pleasure. Okay.
All right, David, thank you for sticking around, and
You're welcome.
we'll get to you sooner next month.
Okay, no problem. Well, enjoy your evening. Thank you for your service to the town.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Pension Committee, under correspondence. Anything for Pension Committee or the investment report?
I guess I have a question for pension.
Sure, if you'd like to.
Not sure, but I think maybe this is the right point in the meeting to ask about the OPEC funding, OPEB funding, and curious, how are we doing in getting that money to work for the taxpayers that we put aside for OPEB? Have we gotten anything established, or we've got some of that money invested? I'm just kind of curious, what's the status? I know we've just begun to fund it.
Mary Jane?
Mary Jane, go ahead.
So we do have the $1.2 million in our fund balance. It is part of the committed reserve that Vanessa reported on this evening. So at the moment, it is just not doing a lot of good for us interest-wise, as can be told by our revenues. But I have been in communication just last week and this week with both our town council and the lawyers that are putting together all of our documentation. We have one minor adjustment to the documents that we look to present at public hearing. And once we do that, especially now that the governor's orders are expiring and we're able to have meetings in a different format, we will be moving that forward. My hope is to have the trust in place, at least on paper, and approved before June 30. And the plan would be to transfer that money as of July 1 into it, where it can begin to earn some better returns.
Will that trust have management similar to our retirement trust funds?
The management of that fund will be under the control of the pension company and be managed in a similar vein.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we're getting there.
I hope so.
Okay, anything else for pension? Okay, we will move on to item number 5, which is review and accept expenditures for the Board of Education for February 2021. As usual, we have Linda Trudeau, but tonight we also have Joe Galino from the Board of Education, who is the reviewer. So Joe, Linda, the virtual floor is yours.
Great. Can anybody hear me okay? Can you hear me clearly, guys? All right, great. Just checking the mic. I had the chance. Well, I'm Joe Galino. I am a member of the Board of Education, and I will be delivering the expenditures for the month. So the expenditures for the month of February were $4,759,072.43. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of February were about 63.29% of the budget, as compared to 61.55% in the prior year. Revenue for the February 2020 was around $4,973, which does include $3,984 from Medicaid and $989 from the pre-K tuition for that month. Salaries, the percent budgeted expected approximates the year prior. As for purchase services, the percent of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. The credit in the electricity line reflects payment from a ZREC credit from CL&P of around $26,589.89. The credit in the postage line is a refund of an overpayment for postage meter leases. In the tuition area, the percent of budget expended is higher than the prior year. And for supplies and materials, the percent of our budget expended is lower than the prior year. The computer software line, although includes software that is COVID related and will be adjusted in the month of March. COVID, the balance of the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant of $282,376 has been received, and funds from the ESSER grant in the amount of $24,513 have also been received. From that ESSER grant, we did use $5,000 of it toward professional development and $19,000 of it towards supplies, mainly in the math department. At this time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask Linda or myself, and that's my presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question before Ken does. I'm going to try anyway. I think I know the answer to this, but for the COVID relief grant money in totality that we received between the 282, the 24, I believe there was another 200 some odd thousand that we've received before. I don't remember the exact amount. Have we gotten everything that we're going to get at this point? And what is the total amount so far received?
I'm going to push it to Linda because I don't have an updated figure at this point.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So the CRF grant was $470,000. We did receive all of that.
Okay.
So one grant was a total of $117,000, of which we have not fully expended yet, but we will be expending that. We are working on the application for the ESSER 2 grant, which is $520,000. And I believe at this time that the plan is to put that towards salaries of the additional staff that was added for this year due to COVID. So that would be fully expended this year as well. We don't have any a definite number on the additional funding. We are hearing that it could be around 1.2 million, but that's not a definite yet for the next round of relief funds.
Okay, so we're sitting.
Tell me to that number.
Okay, so we're sitting at almost 1.3 million in expenditures for half a year right now for COVID.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the most recent numbers that I've gotten from Congresswoman DeLauro's office is 971 million in American Rescue Plan funds will be coming our way to Guilford. As yet to be determined is a portion of what the feds have determined are going to go to county governments. We will be getting a prorated portion of that. I don't know if it's for education, for town, or for a combination of both, but 971 is the current number that we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. It's okay.
Jonathan, go ahead. Yeah, fine. Go ahead.
To Linda, I'm just, trying to look at some of the numbers and hear some of the figures tossed around, and this may not be an easy question to answer, but as we approach the end of the year, what do you think will be our shortfall between what we need to spend for COVID, which I guess is around 1.3 million, at least appropriated, and what we might receive back with these grants that we've applied for, if they come to fruition?
So I'm working on trying to pull all these numbers together. So
yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult question with a lot of unknowns, but I thought
would
maybe
rather
you might
wait
have a ballpark.
And try and do a presentation next month to you on where we think we're going to be with the operating budget, with COVID expenses, with the money coming in, and any potential for request for additional funds. So I would rather wait till next month to have that conversation, if that's okay.
Okay. I get kind of a little bit of a follow-up question. I noticed that we haven't had as much expenditures for coaching this year, and I put the connection together that was probably because we had to suspend a lot of the sports. Is that, it's pretty unfortunate that we might have had to do that, but is that true? And will that give us a little bit of offset in expenses?
Actually, the Board of Education asked the same question. It turns out that the winter sports, because they started late, normally we pay the stipend in 2 payments. We did not do that for the winter sports this year. It all got paid in March. So you will see that payment reflected on next month's report. There are some teams that are not occurring. So we are paying those coaches half the stipend, just as we had done last year. So we will be under budget. I don't have a definite number yet. It's one of the things that we're working on.
Okay. I'm finding that heartbreaking, but I'm thinking from the financial perspective, it might offset the COVID costs slightly.
Slightly. I don't think it's going to be
not substantial.
a huge help
right?
to that.
I have a question regarding tuition.
Before you go on to tuition, Ken, just hold that thought. Matt, you broached the subject of the American Rescue Plan and that this was it 971 you said? That's money that would be able to be used, correct, for these expenses that we've been concerned about literally for the last year, that might be hitting us.
Yes, therefore expenses from last year, as actually it could cover potentially 3 fiscal years and maybe 4 fiscal years. There was obviously an impact to fiscal year 2020. There's no doubt there's an impact in fiscal year 2021. There is likely to be some kind of impact in the budget that you just approved for 2022. But the way the legislation was written, the funds can, for the Board of Education, need to be expended prior to September 30th, I think it is, of 2023. So potentially there would be 4 fiscal years that these funds could be applied to cover some of those costs.
And I saw, was it up to 75% of the funding could be used in the first year?
Well, that's on the municipal side, from what I understand. I don't know. I haven't seen the details on. I haven't seen the details on the education side, but it may well be the same for both. But on the municipal side, you can't draw down more than 75% of your allocation in the first year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Ken, go ahead on tuition. You had a question.
Yes, I'm wondering why the tuition in this strange year is 10% higher than it was at a similar point last year.
That is because this report does not reflect the excess cost grant that was received at the end of February. It will be posted for next month, and you'll see it next month. I wanted to confirm numbers before I made any entries because the numbers that we received in the first round of our excess cost allocation came in at 83.5%, which is a lot higher than what I had anticipated. So I didn't want to record numbers until I was sure that that was the actual amount we were receiving.
So we'll see an adjustment of that next month?
Yes.
And where do you think that will put us, or are you not in a position to?
Well, right now I'm saying that I think tuition is going to be just about $200,000 under budget. Now that could change a little bit between now and the end of the year. We also don't know what the final reimbursement rate for the excess cost will be. I know it's going to go down. It's not going to stay at that 83%. The tuition report that I sent you earlier today, I had adjusted that to assume receiving 71% of our allocation. Previous reports, I had only had it at 69%.
I see.
So I think we are going to get a little bit more than I was originally projecting, but I'm not going to stick with 83 because I'm not comfortable that we're going to get that much. It just seems like a very high number compared to what we've gotten in the past. I don't know that until the end of May, what the final allocation is.
And Linda, they'll make that adjustment by reducing the final allocation, I'm imagining, right?
Yes. That's why they hold back and only give us 75% of our first payment. They hold back 25% to make final adjustments out of.
Okay, thank you.
I do one more, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I just kind of wanted to expand my question a little bit, Linda, and I'm wondering if maybe along the same lines of coaching, if there's actually a few other line items that might give us a little bit of credit because of some COVID restrictions, perhaps lunch aids, travel for sports and music, perhaps professional development because of the difficulties to travel and interact with seminars, so forth. Look like all those lines are running under budget.
Lunchroom aids will have a little bit of a savings, athletic music and others. I think is going to have some savings. I'm not convinced that it's going to be a big one. I have some concerns about some of the timing of the billing for some of those transportation.
Okay. I think I saw that one at about 7-8% expended.
Yeah, it's only 7% now. I know we paid a bunch of bills in March for athletic transportation. So
Stay
I
tuned.
think it's going to be under budget at this time, but not a huge.
Okay, I mean, again, terribly unhappy about not interacting with music and sports, but it does seem like these are some line items that might give us some credits for the COVID expenses that we're incurring.
Right. Same
Okay.
thing with, travel and professional development. They probably will be some savings in those accounts as well.
Yep, I mean, it makes sense that people aren't meeting for seminars and unfortunately, but hopefully things are improving.
Right. The fees have been a lot less for a Zoom meeting as it was for an in-person conference. So,
Oh, of course, that's a factor as well.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Anything further for Joe or for Linda? Warrants, operations packet, or the March 8th.
The only thing I would note is, we see it every month, and the HVAC repairs are an ongoing expense. So just further, from my perspective anyhow, is why we need to upgrade the systems that we are upgrading in the capital proposal that's going to go to referendum.
Which we'll be talking about shortly.
Yeah. One of those bills was for Lathrop House, where they didn't have any heat. So we've had some issues across the district with HVAC.
They don't really specify which building, right, in the notation?
Not on the report that you gave, that you have.
Okay, those weren't
I
necessarily.
tried to change it on other reports and I didn't update this one. I apologize for that. I've asked my staff to make sure that they put the building description in there so that we will see that going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further? Board of Education. I had a note here to make sure we address the tuition report. We already indicated we received that. So if nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of February 2021 in the amount of $4,759,072.43.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? Mr. Galino and Ms. Trudeau, thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight. Item number 6, review and approve expenditures for town government for February 2021. Mary Jane.
Would like to start with revenues.
Okay.
So our revenues as of the end of February are at 94.2% collected, as opposed to last year at this time, 98%. I will note that the percentage in the operating transfer line, 2 up from the bottom, should be 0. We did not have an operating transfer budget the year before. That percentage does not make any changes to the bottom line, but that should just be 0. Not too different this month as opposed to other months as far as what I'd like to discuss. The tax collection is showing 96.3%, whereas we were 100% this time last year. Keep in mind that with the deferral, the last day to pay taxes is April 1st, And as we know from the first round this past July, that after the deferment period, we did come right back up to where we would have been had taxes been collected right away. So we anticipate that as well. When I report next month at this time for the end of March, I will also be prepared to give you April 1st numbers so that you know where you are, because those numbers are part of the collection. We did ask the tax collector about her tax collection rate, which is different than our budgetary percentage, because she's working with actual numbers and all the changes made throughout the year. So just for instance, last February at this time, she was at a collection rate of 98.29. And right now, at the end of this February, it was 97.58. So our collection rate is tracking very well, even though we have another month's worth of taxes to collect for the same time period. Other than that, I really don't have anything different to discuss as far as revenues, unless you have any specific questions.
I see Park and Rec is down 16% in revenues. Is that strictly relatable to what we've been experiencing, or because I think a lot of that may have kicked in a little before the shutdown last year?
It's totally representative of the fact that we are unable to have meetings in the community center, and that is rental revenue that is showing up lower than we would have been. It has nothing to do with programs, only rental.
Okay.
Just a quick point on the revenue side.
Yeah.
That is a clear-cut example of one of the alleged to be eligible reimbursements or a use of the American Rescue Plan funds is loss of revenue related to COVID-19. Clearly, Park and Rec has suffered in several fashions. One is obviously the room rentals. The other is in their meal money for their food budget for seniors' lunches and for breakfast, and then in program fees. So those three, to the best of my ability to determine what is eligible, lost revenue opportunities are clearly somewhere where you could apply the American Rescue Plan funding.
So you'll probably bring this up during expenditures, but that money could also be applied to health department and for the
yes, it can.
for the staff that is going to be added because
It's already been, no, it's already been, some of it's already been added to cover what we need to do right now.
Yeah, so I'll just make note of on the health side, we do have a number of grants that we are taking advantage of. So we are able to cover some of the current costs in the health department at this point, but clearly not all, and clearly not anything new that we'll be adding. But I believe I have 6 grants that we're working on purely from the health department, ranging from $1,400 up to $200,000. So we, as Linda is working on every grant opportunity available, so is the town. I think I have a total of 9 grants currently on my desk.
Okay. Good.
Shall we move on to expenditures,
I
Mr.
believe
Chairman?
so. Yep, I don't believe there's anything else on revenue. So, yep.
Okay, well, my report on expenditures is very boring because I really don't have too much to bring to your attention. We're at 66.6% spent right now, as opposed to 67 this time last year. So I'll entertain any questions anyone may have.
Do not have any. All right. So
Can I ask a quick one?
you can ask a quick one. Sure.
I just noticed it's not like a huge amount of money, but the zoning board of appeals didn't have any revenue for the year. I think, am I reading that right?
Revenue or expense?
I'm sorry, expense.
Correct. They have yet to have any expense for the year.
Okay.
Those,
A lot of money,
those
but I was like,
expenses,
wow.
Jonathan, those expenses will be reflected in your March your packet for March or your April meeting, because the appeal process is done in early March. Over the last couple of weeks, they have been hearing the appeals locally here at Town Hall. So you'll see something next month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
It
very
just caught
minor.
my eye. I didn't know why it was there. Thank you.
Anything on warrants? Special fund, 315 weekly.
Warrants,
Yes, sir.
I have a question on warrants on page 21.
Which can you tell us it's the regular warrants?
Regular or weekly?
Warrant, the regular warrants,
Okay,
page 21,
yep.
legal. What's that $11,000 on assessment appeals? Could you explain that one to us?
Certainly,
That-
we have an outside firm that handles the assessment appeals that typically wind up going to court. I would defer to your board, one of your fellow board members who probably is a little more familiar with the process than I am. But that is the expense we have to defend ourselves against property owners' right to appeal their tax assessment that is not settled by the Board of Assessment Appeals, which happened over the past couple of weeks. So these typically wind up, some of them wind up in court. One of the things you may recall is the farther we get away from a reval year, the lower those appeals tend to be and the less it costs us. It usually is a graduating scale, a significant expense anticipated for that in the first year of a new reval.
And I'll just add, we do track those. We work very closely, Matt and I, with the assessors department, tracking those. And when we do our mill rate calculation for your budget, it is one of the adjustments we make on the back end of that. So we're always apprised of that from the assessor's office as to where we stand.
Mr. Gammerman, are you referring to the 10,950 expense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if
that's-
appeals involved in that.
Well,
You know,
that invoice is actually not for the attorneys. So it's for the appraiser.
Appraiser.
That the town engages to as much as I don't want anybody to think better of the attorneys that are involved in this. That's not an expense for the attorneys. That's the town, when an appeal is taken to Superior Court from the Board of Assessment Appeals, at that point, the town engages an appraiser to do an evaluation of the properties that have been appealed. And so I'm guessing that invoice is not for one specific property that was appealed, but for an aggregate number of properties that appraiser looked at and came and presented an aggregate bill to the town. That's my guess, but
that has at Vera Consulting.
Advisor Consulting, that's the appraisal company that handles a number of the towns, that represents the town side with regard to the value that the assessor has allocated to a specific property. So,
I see.
but I will say, just as a professional courtesy, that the town's attorneys do a very good job of keeping their fees and costs in line. So
Thank you,
but
Jeff.
it's an expense. The first selectman is exactly right. It's an expense that is weighted more towards the first few years following reval, and then tapers off until the next reval cycle starts again. So
Thank you.
Which is 22, right?
yes.
The next reval is 22.
One more that I think went to Youth and Family Services on page 50. A psychological consulting and evaluation invoice for about $16,675.
That's for exactly that consultation evaluation. We do not have a staff person that conducts those evaluations. It's a contracted position that we budget for. And you'll see that's for 3 months, October through December.
We don't know how many consultations were involved in that. We don't know how many people were served in that.
I can look at to see what the invoice says and let you know. I believe it's a per hourly rate, so it may not show how many people, but I'll see what I can find out.
Are any of those costs recoverable at all? In
The
terms of,
medical billing, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I will ask that as well.
Thank you.
Anything further on warrants? Okay, medical. So we saw the expenditures go up, which we kind of knew was coming at some point. I do have a question regarding that amount. I think some of that is obviously some catch up that we've been expecting, but is there Mary Jane, is there a lag time on the billing in terms of, when you see a hit like in February or even go back to August, is that 2 months? Like, could it be said that, the February expenditures are because during the holidays, it was about 2 months? Like, is there a lag time on the expense hitting? Or is it
There is often, you're correct, there is often a lag time, which is why at June 30, we record the IBNR, incurred but not recorded. I'm not sure if I can answer exactly how long that lag time is, or if it's the same for every billing or not. I'm not sure. I don't know if Linda just went off because she were talking medical. No. It's not a question that we've discussed, I think, at our meetings as far as the lag time. But that there is exactly that. That's what that IBNR accounts for at the end of the year.
Okay. Regardless, we did see, we saw the increase for February, but the ISL didn't go up all that much. I mean,
No,
but it didn't. There wasn't a big hit or anything like that. Again, we're kind of like waiting with bated breath. Something, so there'll be a couple, either big claims or everyone will catch up and I'll go to the doctor, get procedures done. But this was a month or last month that started to happen, or seems to have hit a little bit.
It'll be interesting to see as more people get vaccinated, if there's a spike in the increase as people feel more comfortable going to their doctors.
Yep. So wait and see. But anything further on medical? Mary Jane, anything else you wanted to share? Or?
No, I just note that the catastrophic claim, we had a lot of difficulties with reporting for the month of February with Anthem, and we pulled up the wrong numbers. So last month, the number that I had there was too high. I have adjusted that. So we are only at 22% at this point.
Okay.
I just have one more question. We're always curious about the smoothing and whether the ISL will work, or I'm just curious, is there options? Can you tune it and say, hey, I want to make the terms a little different? And did we do any tuning this year for the ISL?
Certainly we have
this upcoming year.
Certainly we have the option of talking with our consultants about that number. At the time we put these numbers together, we did not make any changes. We did take the recommendation of the consultant. He felt that it was maybe not the time to make any adjustment because we are unsure of where things may go. So at this point, we are moving forward with that recommendation.
Okay, I don't have a crystal ball either, but I just was curious if we were thinking about it.
Right, and this is just not the time to do so.
All right.
All right. Anything further on medical? And if not, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of February 2021 in the amount of
So moved.
$2,448,745.
So moved.
Second.
Gotcha. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? I do have an abstention from any payments to Antonazi Associates. All right. Item number 7. Consider and take possible action on resolutions for bonding items for consideration at the April 20th, 2021 referendum. We've heard a lot of this, a lot of the detail on these from our budget hearings. I am going to make a request for all of our benefit to waive the reading of the entire bond resolution. Do I have to ask for a vote on that, Matt?
No, you can beg their indulgence.
Okay, I'm begging your indulgence. As you will beg for mine, because I don't want to read it all, and I don't think you want to hear it, but we have it all in our board pack. It'll all be listed, and of course, in the referendum, the questions will be fully listed during for the vote. So with that, there's 2 bond resolutions, one for the schools and one for the town. And I will just read the statement here. So it's ultimately, I will be entertaining at this time a motion to approve the resolution to recommend an appropriation and bond authorization of $6,172,609 for the replacement of the turf field and track at Guilford High School, upgrades to the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at Guilford Lakes Elementary School, upgrades to the elevator at Melissa Jones Elementary School, the replacement of a boiler at Cox Elementary School, and future project design costs for various town schools.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Call the question?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No abstentions. So that is our first one. Our second for the town. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for recommending an appropriation and bond authorization of $4,497,012 for improvements to various town facilities, the purchase of dump trucks, road reconstruction, improvements to the Lake Quantipoc Dam, and coastal resilience projects.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or not, but First Selectman brought to my attention that I was remiss in adding something to the agenda today. That is the appointment of the auditor, which according to ordinance needs to be done 90 days prior to the end of the fiscal year. So I would ask your indulgence if we could add that to the agenda this evening.
We can, yeah, we could certainly. I was actually thinking we could do that under new business, but
it can be new. I wanted to bring it up under the appropriate. If it's new business, it's fine. I just didn't want to get too far without mentioning it.
Thank you. No, I totally understand. So we'll cover that under new business. I had an item underneath it, but underneath new business, but I think we've already covered it. So I'll hand it off in a second. Okay, so bond resolutions are all set. Moving on to item number 8, committee reports, building permits. Assuming none, no conversations on that. Moving on to old business item number 9. I believe my old business item that I did have here, which we don't have to bring up, is the annual town meeting update. We have heard that it will be a virtual town meeting. I guess that we can note it that way, just to make sure it's captured, but the town meeting on Tuesday, April 6th will be a virtual town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Yes.
It will be. We are developing processes to qualify, to ascertain whether or not any participants are in fact eligible voters, and a process by which they are able to vote. Unfortunately, a significant portion of the burden of that is going to fall on my staff, Tracy and Karen, and the registrar of voters. But there is a process being developed that will allow the community to participate, obviously to ask questions, express their opinions, and then actually vote on whether or not we move that budget to machine ballot.
Maybe I'm broaching a subject that is not totally vetted out yet, but I'm just out of curiosity. Is that something you would do the night of as people are entering the virtual meeting?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we may have to schedule the meeting to start at 7 o'clock in terms of logging on and getting validated if you want to be able to vote, because we will develop a list of those folks who are then eligible to vote. We may have to, based on the fact that some folks might not get there before the meeting starts at 7:30, prior to asking the question, we might have to go back and identify those folks who have not yet been certified to vote. So we're working through that process.
Has there been any consideration on doing like some sort of a RSVP where, just out of curiosity, I know some do if you want to join the town meeting, you need to indicate and then you get sent a link. But I guess people can, that takes away the ability for somebody to join 10 minutes before and they don't have the link. So
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought
we're trying to do it one size fits all instead of 3 or 4 permutations.
Great, makes sense. Okay. Under new business,
Mr. Chairman, I have one item under old business, and it's really it's probably only about an hour and a half old, and it came up when Bob asked the question or made a comment about the funding levels of the pensions at the 81, 79, whatever. And I know that I think Bob was trying to make a point that at the time the markets were completely not representative of where they are today. And I think when I looked, and I was slow on the uptake, but what I noticed was that we have about $11.5 million more in our pension trust today than we did when the audit was conducted, that was our market position as of June 30th. Bob, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
no, not having seen the slide earlier, it kind of caught my attention because I know we typically are quite well funded. But again, and this isn't really all for tonight, it's all about just keeping our eye on the actuarial value that, are we outrunning, despite great market performance, are the obligations outrunning our ability to service them without a hell of a burden on the taxpayer. So, and I know we've talked about, that since they're relatively well funded compared to many others, is this a good opportunity to look at an exit plan or offer exit plans to people? But whenever we get a chance, whenever Mary Jane gets a chance, it'd be great to get an update on the funding levels.
Well, I would just like to add, only because we're on the topic, that we had a number of changes to their assumptions, the amortization schedules, the mortality. There is many changes we made to those assumptions in that calendar, in that fiscal year, which also affected those funding ratios.
Right. So it's just the thing to always keep in mind simply is that it's not a today number, it's a down the road number. It's based on what our real burden is or is anticipated to be.
Agreed. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Anything else? So we're all set, right? Anything else for old business? Anybody? Okay, so under new business, I did have an item here about the American Rescue Plan and the federal stimulus funds. We have discussed that tonight. I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover except that there are regulations to the use of that funding. That is still, from what I'm told, is still fluid. Matt, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to from the discussion tonight, but
Yeah, and Mike, thank you for the opportunity. Again, this is very fluid, to say the least. We are expecting guidance from Treasury. They are the federal entity responsible for providing the guardrails, the rules of the road, the eligibility requirements for the use of these funds. Because there is the likelihood or possibility that we may not have eligible expenses for all 2.1 or 2.2 million of what the town itself is being granted. So that can be a challenge, and we will be as creative as we can relative to identifying expenses and that are in fact eligible. I think I mentioned last week that one of the things that we are entitled to do is to help nonprofits. We are also entitled to help in economic development recovery efforts. So but again, the devil is in the details in terms of what exactly we're going to be able to do with those things. But I want to make sure, I'm going to read to you from a document that I got from Congresswoman DeLauro's office that talks about acceptable use of funds for local government under the American Rescue Plan. And I want to make this clear only because I think there's already chatter in the community about this, and that is that local governments cannot use funds for deposit into any pension fund. In addition, cannot be used directly or indirectly to offsetting a tax. So this is not something that we can say, okay, we're going to use this to reduce the mill rate come July 1. That is that guidance is already out. So there'll be more to come though.
Matt, can I ask you a question? Maybe these details aren't coming forward yet, but would they be able to give money to people who, like, for instance, their businesses have shut down because the closures to help them get back on their feet?
I'm not sure that, again, Jonathan, I don't know, but there are opportunities for it to even going to the extent of setting up revolving loan funds. There's been some discussions about being able to do that to allow businesses to get back on their feet. There are some federal prohibitions against governments actually setting up loan programs, but that doesn't mean that couldn't be funded through, say, a Chamber of Commerce or particularly a Chamber of Commerce or through the Shoreline Foundation. I think we're going to be presented with some opportunities for some pretty creative thinking relative to how we first identify those who need help, and then secondly, how we structure programs so that we can direct some of the funds to get to those folks in a fair and equitable manner. All right. I've already come to the conclusion that this probably will require the establishment of a non-governmental, nonpartisan group of volunteers who will fairly evaluate and adjudicate the expenditure of any town funds for purposes like economic development or nonprofits who are providing COVID relief. So we're going to have some work cut out for ourselves over the next couple of months. But I think it's rife, Jonathan, you're absolutely right. It's rife with opportunities to help people who need the help because they have been severely impacted by COVID. In fact, I'm looking at my screen and I see Megan Scanlon sitting there, and the programs that she's doing around averting homelessness, all right, with the program we put into place with the United Way, I am sure there are folks in this community who could use some additional assistance to avoid foreclosures or rental assistance. So I think there are a significant number of opportunities that we're going to have with these funds. I may be wrong in my initial projections, but I said this earlier. I'm not sure that we actually show today, we can show, a bona fide or eligible expenditure for all 2.1 or $2.2 million. Now, again, we have until 2024 to expend those monies. So that it may well be that some of those needs will extend beyond the next, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But nonetheless, I think it's rife with opportunities. Megan, I saw you put your hand up for a minute.
Oh, no, I was doing the thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, to validate what you said, sorry.
Yeah, I think a little bit of a challenge. You want to identify people really impacted. That swings in a lot of different directions. A lot of business owners have been closed, non-essential workers falling behind on rent and mortgage, and even landlords losing rent revenue. A lot of people impacted.
Right, John, you're absolutely right, Jonathan. And we may be able to do some things within our own social service agency. Tammy DiFrancesco has been working with those that are impacted by the COVID, through the past, I hate to say this, it's a year. My first mass notification I sent out was on March 13th, 2020, about the shutdown and stuff. That was a week ago, a year ago last Friday. But Tammy and her team, through their energy assistance programs, which are state and some of them federal, but there are a host of other programs she has that could probably use with a significant infusion of cash, because we could make it available to far more people.
I wonder if there's an opportunity too to help the students whose education got a little bit disrupted and disbobulated during this period. Of course, I don't know if everybody would sign up for summer school or something like that, but
that would come out of a different pool, right?
Yeah, that's coming out of the money directly for the boards of education.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call it LEA funds, but and it has to do with lost educational opportunities or something.
Matt, one quick question I have, and it was a community member who actually asked me this, and I have no idea, but a lot of times we talk about the 2/3, 1/3, right? The schools are 2/3 of our budget, and the town is a third, approximately. But the schools for education are getting the 900,000 number, and the town is getting the $2.1 million number. You would, there's some that believe, especially in the community, I'm sure, well, why isn't it the same way? Why isn't the schools getting 2.1 versus? Do we have any idea why the allocation is that way, or?
Yeah,
No idea.
I will offer a supposition, and that is that it was difficult to write the rules other than one size fits all. There are major metropolitan and cities significantly bigger than we are, significantly poorer than we are, who are experiencing significant financial trauma. And it would be my best guess that this legislation was written largely to satisfy the major metropolitan areas in terms of the splits, because in the city of New York, it's not a 1/3, 2/3. It's probably more like 50-50 or even a different number. So that's pure supposition. The second piece is the educational entities have had their bite at the apple prior to this. All right, with ESSER funding that has already been made available. I think you talked about it earlier tonight. What was it? Linda mentioned 521 in the last number, and I think there was the monies available prior to that, because that was ESSER 2 on the 521. So there has been some money already coming to those entities, and there's a third tranche of money that is going to be made available, which I mentioned briefly. And that is the county share, and we still don't know how that's going to be split up. It's going to be based on population relative to the state's overall population. So we don't know whether or not that's going to be split between town and boards of ed as well. Long way to say, I really don't know the answer, but I can make some suppositions.
No, thank you for that. They make sense. So, for now. Okay, anything else under, well, let's see, we talked about, okay, so Mary Jane, you would like us to add an item to our agenda. So what would you like us to add officially? This is about the reappointment or appointment of an auditor.
Yeah, I think Tracy would write it something like discuss and appoint auditor for the June 30, 2021 audit.
I'll entertain that in the form of a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Do
Uh,
we
go ahead.
say
Oh.
who the appointment is?
Now you need
Yes,
to vote
that-
on who it is.
Yeah, now,
Right,
now,
so-
yeah, now we'll,
Okay.
yeah, we just added it to the agenda. That's all we did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep,
that was
that's
just adding it to the agenda. So I'll just briefly say that back in February of 2020, a subcommittee of this board met, put out an RFP and recommended, and it was approved, a 5-year rolling contract with then Bloom Shapiro, now Clifton Larson Allen, known as CLA. So they are holding the amounts of that RFP, and this would be the second year of that particular process.
Okay. With that, why don't we, for discussion purposes, why don't we entertain a motion to, wait a minute. Hold on, I might be getting ahead of myself. We currently have Bloom Shapiro CLA in place. So the question is
You
whether,
you need to appoint them every year.
right,
So
right.
you need to appoint an auditor every year. So even though you have the RFP, you still have to officially appoint them.
Okay.
I'll move we appoint Bloom Shapiro CLA to act as auditors for the
Okay.
fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Okay.
Just curious,
Thank
were
you.
there some
No,
bids
go
for
discussion. Go ahead.
for these
I'm sorry, go ahead.
services?
Yeah,
Auditor.
we had a subcommittee that met and made this recommendation, if everybody recalls, I think.
Okay.
If I remember
It
correctly,
was
I think
based
we-
on the bids?
I think we had 5, was there 5 bids altogether? I
5.
believe?
That's
There
right.
were
Five,
5.
Yep.
And we narrowed it down. We had 3 right away, then we're down to 2. We had them back a number of times, and in the end, one of the things actually that stood out for me personally was their ability in this in cyber threats. They own a company in Virginia that specializes in this, and that set them apart from some of the others.
No conflict there?
No.
Were they the lowest bidder?
I don't believe so.
no.
It was the lowest.
There wasn't well, between
I
the
don't
5,
think they
there
were
was,
the highest. They weren't the highest either. They
Yeah,
were
they-
in the middle.
yeah.
I actually, if you'll indulge me, I actually have the spreadsheet open just in case you ask this question. So I'm not sure how you want the information, but I have a total over the 5 years, or I can give you just for that particular year. So let me give you for June 30, 2021, which is what we're talking. Bloom Shapiro came in at 62,400. Actually, there were only 4 bids. I apologize. PKF O'Connor Davies at $68,050. RSM at $61,700, and Seward and Monday, which I believe was the committee's second choice, at $57,000.
Sounds right.
what, did we start with 5 and 1 withdrew, or was that pension?
It's possible. I only have the 4 on my
Yeah.
spreadsheet, though.
Yeah. 1 withdrew, I think.
Yeah,
I think one did withdraw. Yeah.
That's why they're not on my spreadsheet. I thought I remembered 5, but
Yeah, there were 3 like 20 or 25-minute presentations.
Correct.
Well, I guess the only thing I'll say as a discussion point, and then we could go to vote or have more discussion, is obviously Bloom Shapiro has been, our auditor for a while, has been doing a good job. And even when we went back out for RFP to look at others, there's a comfortability factor, and there's a professional factor that I think they bring to the table. Now you've got CLA that they've merged with, or I guess you could say, there's been an M&A, merger acquisition. And it doesn't change anything on their end. Being in the professional role, as most of us are, when you have an entity that is established in an area of the country and someone purchases you, you usually don't change. Maybe you just change your logo, but I think one of the very important things that they mentioned, Vanessa mentioned, was the culture that they have continued to maintain, or will maintain with this company, even though they're much larger. And I have no issue with keeping them on board, and I think they'll continue to do a good job for us. Yep. Mary Jane, your hand was up first.
sorry, I'm sorry, Veronica. You really should speak first, but I will because you called on me.
I'm sorry. I didn't see Veronica. Your hit. I don't know. Sorry.
So we won't duke it out, I'm sure. I just wanted to note that one of the things that Bloom Shapiro, or CLA now, did when they bid on this job last year is they did change their partner. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's what I was
Sorry,
going to say.
Veronica. They changed the partner that we had, so that we would have different eyes looking at our audit. Santo Carta did stay with us, but he is a newer member to that team, and we've only had him a couple of years. So he did stay as the manager on the team, but everyone else on the team changed so that we would have different eyes looking at our numbers.
Without us asking for it, they felt that would be a good idea.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to what Mike was talking about, their professionalism, because that was a concern I had about keeping Bloom Shapiro, again, for another term, was just you get comfortable. So it's always good to have another objective set of eyes. So the fact that they switched partners and the team, I think that speaks a lot to the professionalism of the firm.
Did the committee have any doubt that the low bidder could handle the job and get the job done?
It was a value for money prospect.
So you felt Bloom Shapiro offered a better value?
They did.
Yeah, and the lowest bidder, if I remember, had not done as large a municipality as Guilford, although I believe that they would be able to do the job. They did not have that level of experience.
That's exactly right. We did have confidence in the lowest bidder that they would be able to do the job, but there's greater value with Bloom Shapiro, and there's, to a certain extent, a certain amount of familiarity that they had with municipalities of our size that gave us greater confidence recommending them.
Yep. Everyone recalled. It's amazing how a year goes by and you recall all this again.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but
Go back to the auditor discussion. All right. If nothing further, which I don't know if there is, but if there's not, I'm just going to go ahead and call the question to the motion. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstention. Okay.
Oh, I'll abstain.
Okay. Item number 11. Anything else under new business? No. Item number 11, public forum. I'm not observing anyone in public forum, so I will move on. And before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I think it would behoove us to just Again, indicate the meetings coming up, the town meeting, annual town meeting on Tuesday, April 6th, which will be virtual. Information forthcoming. And of course, an in-person budget referendum on April 20th, which I don't necessarily want to speak for all of us, but I think I can in saying that we're happy that that is going to be the case. We're not happy necessarily with the with the issues that we're holding this vote in, but I think we're very happy that we're that much closer with vaccinations and with people feeling comfortable to come out, hopefully. And I would urge anybody watching this to please spread the word about getting out to vote. I know we did it very, very safely during the presidential election where we had a lot. I don't know what the turnout was in person, but I can be pretty confident it was probably twice as much as what we typically get at a budget referendum. And we would love to see that kind of turnout at a budget referendum. So that was just a PSA for the public. Okay, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I was gonna say, who's gonna be my second? Wow. All
Are we
right,
gonna have any discussion about building permits, or are we gonna skip it?
I brought it up.
Yeah.
I missed it. I didn't
No,
even
you know,
realize we hit
committee
building
reports,
permits.
building permits, and no one said anything, so I
was kidding.
kept going. All
I'm
right,
for adjourning. I was just
All right.
kidding.
call the question, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.